So if you've been studying the Bible for any point of time, you'll see how Yeshua, in, I think it's like Matthew 15, he says that he's not come but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel. And so when you kind of study it out, right, you see that, well, the house of Israel and the house of Judah, in the book of Second Kings, right, from chapter 17 to the end, right, first the house of Israel goes in captivity because they did pagan idolatry. Then the house of Judah goes into Babylonian captivity because of also seeing what the house of Israel did and doing the same thing. But then Ezekiel 4 tells you that, okay, the punishment for the house of Israel is going to be 390 years. The punishment for the house of Judah is supposed to be for just about 40 years. And so, well, the house of Judah, they return. You see that when you read Ezra 1. But obviously, Yeshua, he says he's not sent but unto the lost sheep of the house of Israel, because the house of Israel never returned. And so what you have is the house of Judah, they're supposed to look for their brothers and sisters, the house of Israel, right? But today, right, no Jews are looking for the house of Israel. You had Yeshua and his apostles and disciples, right? They were looking for the house of Israel at the time. Paul was looking for it, right? And now you have the watchmen that are rising up, the watchmen of Ephraim that are rising up, that are looking for the lost sheep of the house of Israel. But Judah of today is not. But Judah back then, right, nearing the end of the captivity of the house of Israel, right, the house of Judah, they did actually make an effort to look for the house of Israel. And so this is by them writing the Septuagint. And so if you even look at the timeline, right, so the house of Israel, they went into captivity at 722 BC. And then so 309 years would bring you to like 332 BC, something like that, right? So that's when they were supposed to return. And then so a little bit before that, I think maybe like 100 years or so around that time frame, right? Judah has written the Septuagint, right, to bring back the house of Israel. Right, and the Septuagint is translating the Hebrew Bible into Greek, right? Because the house of Israel, they were devoured by the Gentiles, right? All these Greek-speaking nations, these heathen nations. And so the Septuagint, and even they make it more plainly written in some cases for words to make it easier for them to understand things. And I'll really start off, but they never returned, right? The house of Israel, they never returned. And so when you read Leviticus 26, right, 7 times more is their punishment, right? Because they don't keep the commandments. Because if they were ashamed, then they would have returned. And this, that being ashamed part, you see that that's the whole reason why the Ezekiel temple, right, was never built. Because you hop down to like the middle of Ezekiel 43, and it says if they were ashamed, right, then they would have basically, this temple would have been built. But they weren't ashamed, right, because they never repented, right? And that's why you have their punishment was 7 times, to be from 390 years to now 2,730 years. Right, and that brings you up to 2008, when a lot of people start waking up, start following the Holy Covenant, but then they start feasting, right, trying to do God's feast in a polluted land when they're still in captivity. So now wanting to go over Psalm 40, right? So Psalm 40 is about the servants of Yehovah. I waited patiently for Yehovah, and he inclines unto me, and heard my cry. And he brought me up also out of a horrible pit, out of the miry clay. And so you can think about this, how there's that one parable where there's those 2 sons, and the younger son wants to take the inheritance. And so, but then he goes, he leaves his father, right, and then he goes like like basically like with the mud, with the swine or whatever. But then even in the new Song of Moses, right, Yehovah leads um, these people, and that's Jacob. Actually, I'll read that real quick. Because Yehovah establishes his goings. So let's see here. Yeah, so Deuteronomy 32, verse 9. For Yehovah's portion is his people. Jacob is the lot of his inheritance. He found him in a desert land and in the waste howling wilderness. He led him all about. He instructed him. He kept him as the apple of his eye. As an eagle stirreth up her nest, flutteth over her young, spreadeth abroad her wings, taketh them, beareth them on her wings. So Yehovah alone did lead him, and there was no strange God with him. He made him ride on the high places of the earth, that he might eat the increase of the fields, and he made him to suck honey out of the rock, and oil out of the flinty rock, butter of kine, and milk of sheep, with fat of rams, of lambs, and rams of the breed of Bashan, and goats, with the fat of kidneys of wheat. And thou didst drink the pure blood of the grape. Right, and so this is talking about the servants that Yehovah established the goings of Jacob. Right, so now this is back to Psalm 40, where I'm going to start again at verse 1. I waited patiently for Yehovah, and he inclined unto me, and heard my cry. He brought me up also out of the horrible pits, out of the miry clay, and set my feet upon a rock, and established my goings. Right, setting his feet upon the rock is Yeshua. You see that in 1 Corinthians 10. Right, that rock is the rock at Horeb. Right, because it's the same rock that followed them, where the water, that spiritual water, came out. And now that spiritual water is the Ten Commandments. Because out of Horeb, the rock at Horeb, came the Ten Commandments. Right, that gives you life. Right, so these people that are written of in Psalm 40, they're founded upon the Ten Commandments. And so now you see in Matthew 7, where these wise people that hear his sayings and do them, right, they keep the Ten Commandments, they're likened unto a wise man that built their house upon a rock. And that's the same rock, the Ten Commandments, Yeshua. And then skipping down, right, so they're set upon a rock, and then skipping down to verse 17 of this chapter, but you really got to read the whole thing. But I am poor and needy, right, blessed are the poor in spirit, for theirs is the kingdom of heaven. Right, the poor in spirit tremble at the word of Yehovah. Yet Yehovah thinketh upon me. Thou art, and like he thinks upon them because, well, the people that have a broken and contrite spirit, God won't despise them. And I think that's like Psalm 51. And so, thou art my help and my deliverer. Make no tarrying, O my God. So there's those other people, right? So the Christians that say, oh, like, we desire the rapture, the preacher of rapture. But then Amos, right, Amos 5, verse like 18 says, woe unto you that desire the dark and terrible day of Yehovah. Right, it's darkness. It's not light. And then you even see how these people, there's these other people, these other drunkards of Ephraim in like Matthew 24 that basically like put off like that. Like, or they, like, there's people, of course, that desire the woeful day, and there's people that say, like, oh, like, it's like, far off, like, it's, like Jehovah's gonna tarry, or whatever, but, like, the servants, they don't have either of those hearts, right? They're not saying, oh, it's gonna be for a long time, let's just eat and drink with the drunken, right? Let's just say, like, peace, peace, shalom, shalom, we're gonna be dwelling in peace and safety, right? They don't say that, and they also don't say, oh, like, we want the destruction to come, right? We want to just get pre-trib raptures and let all these people die, right? That's not it either. But since they are working, right, they're doing the work, they're like, God, don't make any tarrying. And so this is Habakkuk 2 in the Septuagint, which reads a whole lot different when you compare it with the King James. I will stand, and because it's quoting Psalm 40, the entire book. I will stand upon my watch and mount upon the rock. Right? They're standing upon their watch because they're watchmen. And watchmen in Ezekiel 2 and 3, they rebuke sin. and watch to see what he will say by me. Right? The watchmen speak the words of Yehovah, because his spirit is dwelling in them, because they're mounted upon the rock, and the rock is the Ten Commandments. Because you only received the Holy Spirit in John 14, 15 through 17, because you keep the commandments of Yehovah. Right? Same thing confirmed in Acts 5:32. Right? So Yehovah is speaking by the servants, and so that's even why you have Habakkuk 1 having a flipperoonie in Acts 13, where it's basically says like, I'll work a work in your days, and Acts 13 says, though a man declared unto you. But Habakkuk 1 doesn't say that. It doesn't say a man, right? It doesn't say though a man. But Jehovah's going to be speaking through his servants. But yeah, and watch to see what he will say by me, and what I shall answer when I am reproved. And Yehovah answered me and said, write the vision and that plainly on a tablet, that he that reads it may run. For the vision is yet for a time, and it shall shoot forth at the end, and not in vain. Though he should tarry, wait for him, for he will surely come and will not tarry. Right? Make no tarrying, oh my God, because it's quoting this entire Psalm 40. Right? And so who are these people in Psalm 40? If he should draw back, my soul has no pleasure in it. Right? So don't bury your talents. Right? You got to go forward. But the just shall live by my faith. Right? Because these people are living by faith. Right? You see in Matthew 8, where these people are, like if Yeshua says, go, they go. If he says do, they do. If he says come, they come. Right? Because they're following the Lamb wherever he leads them. And so that faith, right, the just shall live by my faith. Right? And you see in James 2, have not the faith of Yeshua with respect to persons. But if you fulfill the royal law, according to the scripture of Leviticus 19, 15 through 18, thou shalt love thy neighbor as thyself, ye do well. Right? But if you have respect to persons, you're convinced of the law as transgressors. Right? So what's written in the law? To rebuke sin, to judge righteous judgment. Because that's the faith. Right? That's what the watchmen do. But the arrogant man and the scorner, the boastful man, shall not finish anything, who has enlarged his desires the grave, and like death he is never satisfied. And he will gather to himself all nations, and will receive to himself all the peoples. And so when you compare the King James with this, right, the house of Judah at the time, they plainly tell you that these people that are transgressing by wine, as the King James says it, they're arrogant, right? They're proud. They're the drunkards of Ephraim, right? Drunk with pride. And so when you go on the story, right, you see even how Habakkuk 2 is pointing you back to Psalm or Isaiah 41, right? Which is obviously it's talking about Yeshua, but here it is. So verse 25, I raised up one from the north, and he shall come, right, but will not tarry. From the rising of the sun shall he call upon my name. Or what is his name? It's Yehovah. And you see the same thing in Psalm 40. And he shall come upon princes as upon mortar, and as the potter treadeth clay. Right? So of course it's talking about Yeshua, because he's given the rod of iron by his father. But so as he has received of his father, so will the servants of Yehovah that have overcome. And you see that in Revelation 2. I think of the last couple of verses. Right? So the 144,000, the man-child, they're going to receive a rod of iron, just as Yeshua has received of his father. Right? So Isaiah 41, verse 25, it's not only talking about Yeshua, but it's also talking about the man-child, the 144,000, Jacob. Right? The same Jacob that Psalm 40 is talking about. Same Jacob that are living by faith, that even Paul quotes several times. And then so you see the same thing continue, right? Isaiah 27, talk about the exact same thing that you saw in Isaiah 41. These same people. Verse 9, by this, therefore, shall the iniquity of Jacob be purged, and this is all the fruit to take away his sin, right? Ungodliness is turned away from Jacob, right, at the time of the elect, when there's the fullness of the Gentiles that happens at 2008. Same thing I was talking about. When he maketh all the stones of the altar as chalk stones that are beaten in asunder, right? Same thing as Isaiah 41. The groves and the images shall not stand up. Yet the defense city shall be desolate, and the habitation forsaken, and left like a wilderness. There shall the calf feed, and there shall he lie down, and consume the branches thereof. When the boughs thereof are withered, they shall be broken off. The women come and set them on fire, for it is a people of no understanding. Therefore, he that made them will not have mercy on them, and he that formed them will show them no favor. But we have the favor of God, right? No, don't say the burden of the Lord, right? His grace is conviction upon your heart. He's not going to show you favor for saying, "Oh, we're just saved by your favor." It's not favor that he gives you. It's his conviction, his spirit of conviction, that if you do spite, right, then you're going to have worse punishment than being stoned to death under the law of Moses. And it shall come to pass in that day that Yehovah shall beat off from the channel of the river unto the stream of Egypt, and ye shall be gathered one by one, O ye children of Israel. Right? This is the second Exodus, gathered together. And it shall come to pass in that day that the great trumpet shall be blown, and they shall come which were ready to perish in the land of Assyria, and the outcasts in the land of Egypt, and shall worship Yehovah in the holy mount at Jerusalem. And so you continue going down this line, right? You have Isaiah 27, and so at this time, right, you have where, like Isaiah 27, what I was just reading, where this is the second Exodus, when when Israel's being gathered together, right? And so you have this same thing in Isaiah 2, right? And many people shall go and say, "Come ye, and let us go up to the mountain of Yehovah, to the house of the God of Jacob, and he will teach us of his ways, and we will walk in his paths. For out of Zion shall go forth the law and the word of Yehovah from Jerusalem." And right, so they're going to walk in his paths, and you see the same thing in Isaiah 30, and yeah, and so Isaiah 30 verse 20, or actually, do I want to read that first? Yeah, we could go with that. And thou, Yehovah, give you the bread of adversity and the water of affliction, yet shall not thy teachers be removed into a corner anymore. Right, the very elect, the watchmen, they're scattered to the four corners of the earth, but at the time of the second Exodus, they're not going to be just all over. They're going to be right in front of your faces. Yet shall not thy teachers be removed into a corner anymore, but thine eyes shall see thy teachers. Right, they're not going to be scattered to the four corners. And thy ears shall hear a word behind thee, saying, "This is the way, walk ye in it. When ye turn to the right hand, when ye turn to the left." Right, this is the same thing that the watchmen are already saying in Jeremiah 6. Verse 16, "Thus saith Yehovah, stand ye in the ways, and see, and ask for the old paths, where is the good way, and walk therein, and ye shall find rest for your souls. But they said, we will not hearken. Also I sent watchmen over you, saying, hearken to the sound of the trumpet. But they said, we will not hearken." Right, this is what the watchmen have been saying the whole time. And so now at the end, you have how Daniel in the Septuagint says that, these like the book, it's sealed, but it's going to be revealed at the end, right, by these teachers, right? So this is the Septuagint, Daniel 12 verse 4, because the Septuagint, right, those people, they helped the house of Israel understand what's actually going on here, because the King James just reads like this: "But thou, O Daniel, shut up the words and seal the book even to the end. Many shall run to and fro, and knowledge shall be increased." Right, it says, oh, it's just going to be sealed until the end, but when? And so it's going to be at this time when there's all these teachers, right? They're going to be right before your faces. So in the Septuagint it reads this: "And thou, Daniel, close the words and seal the book to the time of the end. until many are taught and knowledge is increased. Right? And so how is, like, when is that, like, that's only going to happen, right, at the second Exodus, when the teachers are going to be right in front of faces, right? They're going to be the ones that are teaching it, and the book is no longer going to be sealed. Because even we had our brother Mark, right, he was basically asked by another one of our brothers, Nate, I mean, even before that, right, almost 30 minutes before, he's like Mark is going through some stuff, right, and then our brother Nate is like how can I, like, just like when Mark isn't even there, like, I just want to, like, comfort my brother, right? And then only like 30 minutes after that, Nate asked, well, like, why is it that you haven't been, like, led to go into Daniel, right? Because Mark has learned in the scriptures, and you can see them in aka Watchmen Wake Up, and he's like, well, I've never, like, I can't understand it. It's like basically he's saying, like, it's sealed for me, like, I'm never, like, God never told me to go there, and yeah, I can't learn it, right? And so this is exactly what Isaiah 29 says. Starting in verse 10. For Yehovah hath poured out upon you the spirit of deep sleep, and hath closed your eyes. The prophets and your rulers, the seers hath he covered. The vision of all is become unto you as the words of a book that is sealed, which men deliver to one that is learned, like our brother Mark, saying, read this, I pray thee. What Nate did, and he saith, Mark, I cannot, for it is sealed. The exact same thing played out, not even like, and then it's just like, this is brought to remembrance. And the book is delivered to him that is not learned, saying, read this, I pray thee. And he saith, I'm not learned. Verse 18, and in that day shall the deaf hear the words of the book, right? In that day, right, the dark and terrible day of the Lord, right, when then this woman is taken out, the man-child is called to the throne, and then and so that man-child, they're gonna, I guess, learn the book of Daniel, right? It's going to be unsealed at that time, in the time of the second Exodus, when they're back there comforting the woman, telling them to go here, there, and wherever. So, and in that day shall the deaf hear the words of the book, and the eyes of the blind shall see out of adversity and out of darkness. Therefore, thus saith Yehovah, who redeemed Abraham concerning the house of Jacob, Jacob shall not now be ashamed, neither shall his face now wax pale. But when he seeth his children, the work of mine hands, in the midst of him, they shall sanctify my name, Yehovah, and sanctify the Holy One of Jacob, and shall fear the God of Israel. They also that erred in spirit shall come to understanding, and they that murmured shall learn doctrine. Yeah, so this is exactly what it's saying, right? Daniel's only going to be, like, revealed. Of course, like, there's some things, like, that you can know, but with all the changes that have been made with the book of Daniel, and everybody's just trying to understand Daniel, like the 70 weeks, or like, oh, like, there's just so many different things that people are saying. Even, like, there's 3 different books that are just completely removed, or you have like the I think there's like the 3 like holy children, and like the prayer of, like, Azariah, and like another thing like Bell and Dragon or something like that, I remember. Like, all these things are even removed from the book. And if you even, like, check the difference between the Septuagint and the like the King James or whatever, right, you're gonna see, like, a ton of differences. And so it's only gonna be revealed at the time of the second Exodus. And so still you can read the book, because there's some things where you have the Antichrist that's going to gain influence over people that forsake the 10 Commandments. And Daniel 11, you also have Daniel 12, that Daniel 11 also talks about those people that have to fall, right, and have to get tried in the furnace of affliction, to make their robes white, because they're going to go through great tribulation. It tells you about, like, the time, like the duration, right, 1,260 days of great tribulation, 3.5 years. You also have the Messiah in Daniel 9, but then, I mean, a lot of other stuff, it's just sealed. But yeah.